Welcome back to the 10th Justin and Tyler Movie Awards, and we are into our People Awards section, our best actors, actresses, and directors for 2023. Now, for each of those three categories, if you've watched us before, you know this, we each have 3 honorable mentions, and then our number 3, number 2, and number 1 best actors, actresses, and directors in 2023. We will start with our actors, and of course, we'll each give our honorable mentions, and then we'll go back and forth with our 3, our 2, and our 1. I'll kick things off with this one with my honorable mentions for Best Actors in 2023. Of course, have 3 of them. My honorable mentions go to Leonardo DiCaprio in Killers of the Flower Moon, Tom Hanks in A Man Called Otto, and this is the fun one, Zac Efron in The Iron Claw. So Leonardo DiCaprio plays a character by the name of Ernest Burkhart, who is a World War I veteran, and he's a nephew, the nephew of Robert De Niro's character, William King Hale, who is like a cattle rancher and what they called a benefactor for the Osage Nation. Basically, like, you guys aren't smart enough to handle all this money, all this oil money, so we'll just come and take care of that for you, and you know, we're your friends, we're your buddies, we're your pals. Ernest Burkhart kills people and is poisoning his wife.
Yeah,
So-
which, oh my god, he's such a piece of crap.
He is
Like, it's
such-
one thing to ruin other people, which is
Yeah.
bad, but your own wife?
Yeah, he's like
Who's like a real sweetheart.
Very. So I mean, his character is at the same time a piece of garbage, but also like very much a victim of like, this is what my uncle expects of me kind of thing. Like, I mean, like, De Niro's character is clearly the cartoonish supervillain of the story, but Ernest Burkhart, who, need I remind you, at the beginning of the movie is just like, the way he makes his money is he's a cab driver by day, but by night he just robs Osage Nation people. Like, it's just like, there's almost nothing redeemable about that character, but he is also at least somewhat a victim of his circumstances. He marries Molly Kyle, who's of course played by Lily Gladstone in the movie. Like I say, just committing crimes against the Osage to try to gain their oil rights and their head rights and their money. He's obviously developing so much as a performer as he ages. Like, obviously he's playing very different roles, and this was a very different role for him. I just thought he was quite good. Tom Hanks, we talked about a little earlier, A Man Called Otto, plays the main character Otto, just a curmudgeonly old widow, basically. Notorious in his neighborhood for just his bad mood, basically. His wife recently passed away, so he's early on in the movie attempts to end things, and would have if not for the intervention of his neighbors. And like I said, it shouldn't have shocked me how in command of a role like this he was, but he's so fantastic in that movie. And Zac Efron, playing Kevin Von Erich, a member of the legendary Von Erich wrestling family, as he kind of rises through the ranks of the Texas pro wrestling scene in the late 70s, early 80s, all the way through to the 90s. And that was like maybe the surprise performance of the year for me, because you don't look at Zac Efron and say like, super talented character actor, but he so encompassed. Like, if you listen to him talk and listen to Kevin Von Erich talk, it's almost like Austin Butler and Elvis, right? Like, it's just like he so like became Kevin Von Erich that I was really blown away. And look, we're both, you know, like wrestling fans, and we have been for decades, or maybe not necessarily as active nowadays, but like we have love for it, right? And the way that he kind of took on learning how to wrestle and learning how to make like movie wrestling look pretty good, especially for like the style of the time. I just thought Zac Efron achieved something quite good with that role.
I mean, you're not alone on the Efron thing because like people are like career best, which is undeniable. I don't know if you could even make the argument that he's ever done a better role than this.
No, probably not.
I considered two of those picks. Like, I actually considered the Leonardo DiCaprio one yesterday. I was like, should I add that in? And that was great. That's a great performance. I mean, Leo's always gonna hit it home, like, just home run, right?
Yeah.
And I should have considered Hanks, too. I don't know why he sort of slipped. Like, I write this stuff down throughout the year, my considerations, so at the end of the year I just go through it and be like, okay, these are the ones I thought were really amazing as I watched movies. And I didn't have Hanks, but then when I brought up the movie and we talked about it, and I was like, oh, I should have considered Hanks. So those are all really good picks. I got no problem with them whatsoever, so they're acceptable. Alright, so my honorable mentions are Timothy Chalamet in Wonka, David Ogrodnik in Johnny.
Okay.
There's a cheater pick. And my number one honorable mention is Nicolas Cage. For a body of work, but mostly dream scenario.
Right.
Alright. For Chalamet, he's... obviously that dude is super talented. But really he's been the domain of you. You're always giving him love. I wouldn't be surprised if you give him love in your top three. For me, he's always just been like, I respect this kid, a lot. He's so good. But I realized I enjoy him when he's more whimsical and silly and kind of fun. Sort of like I enjoy Brad Pitt more. Like Brad Pitt has done some really good, great, serious roles. But when he's playing like a more charming and witty or whatever character, that's when I like Brad Pitt most.
Yeah.
And with Chalamet, like he had that sort of bit part in Don't Look Up.
Yes.
Where he was like I don't know if he was a skateboarder or he's just like a younger, he's younger anyway, but just a guy that was like, can I be vulnerable in your car? And he's just kind of like that, and I really liked him in that role. And then Wonka's just him being like whimsical. And I watched the movie and I was like, should I consider him? Then I didn't. But then a couple days later, I'm like, I should add him in, at least as an honorable mention. I should give Chalamet his flowers to some degree because even though I do love him, I actually have never given him an award, even though I've respected a bunch of his performances. And then in terms of David Ogrodnik, it's a pretentious foreign movie flick. But he's played someone that actually lives. Like he's a priest who helps a criminal when the criminal is made to do community services at his hospice.
Okay.
He's also dying of cancer himself. It's not a bombastic performance. It's pretty low key, but there's a part later on that's relatively emotional. It's subtle how the guy is steadfast in the face of death. It just makes the harder parts of the movie more effective. Also, there's just something I like when done well about like priest characters. To just like, especially when they're like facing death and he's just going on and he's trying to help this guy. It was an underrated, maybe because it's a cheater pick, so maybe some people weren't classifying Johnny, as maybe they weren't classifying as a 2023 movie, so maybe that's why, or maybe they just didn't love it as much as I did, but I thought his performance was really great. And then Nicolas Cage, in the old way, he was completely fine. Renfield, he got to be kind of hammy, and that was fun. I wish he was the main character, honestly. He probably, that would have been more enjoyable to me. Sympathy for the Devil, he was easily the star, but again, insane, over the top, legitimately menacing, that's fine. The Retirement Plan, he hands it up a bit, but not to the point of Renfield. Kind of more of a mixture of his serious and hammy stuff. But his dream scenario, he plays an inoffensive evolutionary biologist who teaches but wants to write a novel, and he plays it so well.
Yeah.
Like, I often say how Cage can get by sometimes with just kind of being, like, a presence. Like, there's just a presence about him.
Yeah.
That's just really impressive. And his performance is interesting because it's his lack of presence that makes it good. Like he's so good at playing a character that hasn't done anything to deserve the deluge of shit that just gets put on him. Like, he's so unassuming, he's almost non-existent.
Right.
Right? He's so, like, blasé and just blah. And yet, it's a compelling performance that you feel some sympathy for it. So, yeah. So those are my honorable mentions.
I definitely considered Cage, like you, mostly for Dream Scenario, but like the body of work was so large that I was like, ooh, like I think I feel almost compelled to kind of put him in here.
He had Butcher's Crossing as well, which I didn't watch because I was going to, but then I was like, I don't think I need.
Right? Yeah, fair enough.
Once Dream Scenario dropped, I was like, yeah. And he could be number 3. And I probably should have put him number 3, but I never know with Nicolas Cage. I'm like, is it just because I just love Nicolas Cage, or is he really deserving of it? Like, if it was Pig, obviously, I mean, that was number 1. That would be number 1 this year.
That was very deserving.
Yeah, that was very deserving of being number 1. And then, don't get me wrong, his Dream Scenario performance is very deserving of 3, which I kind of wish I would have put him in, but whatever.
One of the things that I love about his performance, specifically in Dream Scenario, is, like, people are, like, he cares less, like, his character cares less about, what these people's dreams are than he does what his role in the dreams are.
Yeah.
Like, he'll ask somebody to talk about their dream, and they'll describe this fantastical dream, and he was like, oh, so I was just standing there.
Yeah, it was so great.
All right, who else had a dream, right? Like, it's like...
Yeah, well, I get the feeling we're probably going to talk more about Dream Scenarios, so I'm probably going to leave some of my comments, but yes, that was great. Yeah, he was just a really entertaining performance.
My number 3 best actor of 2023 is Paul Dano in Dumb Money.
Oh,
So Paul Dano plays the main character by the name of Keith Gill, aka Roaring Kitty, who is a Massachusetts financial analyst and part-time YouTuber who basically just gets on his YouTube channel and talks about stocks. And that's like, it's a very simple kind of character, but Roaring Kitty, the character, and Keith Gill were at the center of the GameStop stock explosion, basically during the panini, and that's what the dumb money, dumb money refers to what like hedge fund investors would call basically small time investors would call them dumb money because we're taking the dumb money kind of thing, and the whole movie is about bucking against Wall Street, basically, and bucking against these, hedge fund managers who have millions and millions of dollars worth of shorts in these small companies, just begging for them to go under. And then, of course, you have Paul Dano and his Roaring Kitty clique, who all just dump money into GameStop, and these hedge fund managers lose $1 billion a day, and it's such an entertaining movie, and I'm realizing more and more how much love I have for Paul Dano and how excited I am when Paul Dano's name comes up attached to basically anything.
I'm noticing that for you too.
Yeah,
for how much you like Paul Dano.
And they kind of came out of nowhere, but he just has put together this string of really wonderful, entertaining performances. And I mean, something like this, he's not like a big bombastic character.
No.
He plays one on YouTube, which, wouldn't you know, maybe I relate to this a little bit. I'm a little more bombastic on YouTube than I guess I am in real life. But
fair enough. I didn't consider him, but for no reason. Just I was like, great. Dano's great. And I just never really, because I'm only trying to put in the ones that I feel really strongly about when I'm like for consideration. Otherwise, I'm going to have 50 performances that I have to go through.
Exactly.
It's really meaningless to me. But nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with Dano in general. Okay, so my number 3, I feel very conflicted about, is Jonathan Majors in Creed 3, and mostly, but also Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I actually thought he was quite enjoyable in, but I mostly want to talk about Creed 3. And yes, I know what he did.
Yep.
And I seriously considered replacing him. I did. So I really thought, do I take him out of principle? Because I'm trying to put myself in a position of, do you really want to celebrate the work of someone who did something bad, or at least has been, tried for it?
Right.
And then I thought, but also, like, him as Dame in Creed 3 was, like, one of my favorite performances of the year. I loved him in that movie, how at first he was kind of cool and stuff, but then he became this, like, megalomaniac, like, narcissistic, I know that word is overused, but, like, this guy who's just, he had this kind of plan to take over, and he did, and he became a real shithead.
Yeah, it
was
awful.
He was just so good at it. He was in a movie that had so much great about it, he was arguably the best part, even though he wasn't in it as much, obviously, as Jordan, but...
Right.
I loved every second. It was magnetic. I was so drawn to it. And then obviously it's a Kang variant. One of the Kang variant, rather, in Ant-Man. I thought he was really cool, though that wouldn't have won it for him or anything. And
no.
And had he had magazine dreams, if it wouldn't have been pushed back,
right,
we could have been seeing a #1. Because he's apparently really, 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 really good in it. Not as happy, and some people might be like, why would you celebrate it? It's like, because the performances were great.
Right.
What can I say? Like, I'm like, it sucks what he did. Obviously, that's the worst part. But like, I'm so sad because he was such a rising star.
Yeah.
And I was really becoming a massive fan of him. This should have been his year. Like, it should have been. We said this early in the year.
Yeah.
We were like, man, this guy might be #1 unless some stuff happens, right? And, he could have been.
Yeah.
Like, my top 3, it's always hard.
Trust me, folks, the weirdness is going to continue. My #2 best actor of 2023 is a former professional wrestler, Dave Bautista. And this is the year that Dave Bautista probably should have been #1. Because if Dune 2 would have come out, he's in that too. Yeah. And so as a body of work thing, I probably could have justified giving him #1. And this is mostly for Knock at the Cabin. A prime example, as we've talked about in the past, of good M. Night. Which is like, it's never his direction that's ever the problem. And in Knock at the Cabin, he plays a character called Leonard. And you're introduced to Leonard right at the beginning of the movie. Yeah. In this incredible opening sequence where you just have this little girl who's catching, I think, grasshoppers. And this just giant muscle man just walks up on her, but he's wearing like thick rimmed glasses, and he's just like, hello, my name is Leonard. Can I catch grasshoppers with you? And they have this genuine, like, wonderful conversation. And then you find out he's part of a group of 4 people that's like, someone in your family has to kill themselves to save the world. We're just like, what's going on with this movie? But he is so good in that movie.
Yeah, he is.
He's basically the leader, basically, of this group of 4, and like, they're not crazy. Like, they're so emotionally broken from the fact that this is, like, I can't believe this is what we have to do.
Yeah.
Leonard is still just like, I'm so sorry that this has to be you. And it's such a subdued and, like, patient performance, and one that, like, he shouldn't be capable of. Like, it shouldn't, like, as somebody who's not, like, a trained actor for his entire life, he shouldn't be capable of a performance like that, but he is, and that's why he's, like, a unicorn in this space. He's so special.
Yeah.
And that singular performance, plus, of course, like, he was like, it's like a hand in a custom-made glove for him to play Drax. Like,
that one makes sense.
He's just like you think of that character, and it's just like, they're it's like, almost like Jason Momoa and Aquaman. Like, they're married now, right? Yeah, and I can't imagine anybody else playing that role. And it's not like, oh man, Drax was the performance of the year, but it contributes, and they're 2 like wildly disparate performances. And again, had Dune 2 come out, he plays an entirely different character in Dune 2.
Yeah.
So you could just see, like, the width of his abilities as an actor. Like, I think Dave Bautista is genuinely special. And he's my number 2 on the year.
Yeah, in Knock at the Cabin, his performance goes against his appearance.
Yes.
Like you were saying, he just, like, you look at him, you're like, nah, this can't be. Yeah, I had him in consideration. I don't think I gave him Dark Horse at the mid-years, but I had him in serious consideration there. And I thought it was going to be a really surprising pick, but then at the mid-years you picked him, and I was like, oh, Justin knows what's up.
Yeah.
I didn't put him in mine, but man, that performance has aged well. I guess I should have thought more about it, because maybe I would have put him in, but yeah, that performance has aged well for me. So my number 2 is going to be my number 1, but I'm calling an audible because he's not technically the main character of the movie, so he's in it less.
Okay.
He would win, like, Best Supporting Actor, or maybe he did, because the Golden Globes happened. I don't even know if he was nominated or not, to be honest. I didn't pay much attention. Ryan Gosling as Ken in Barbie.
He's just Ken.
I had him as number 1 because I don't know that there was a more entertaining performance of the year.
Right.
And even as I say this, I'm like, should I have called the audible? I don't know, and I will never know. My 1 and 2 are so interchangeable, but really it just comes down to the fact that he's just, like, he's so unbearably handsome, but also so damn good at playing a complete loser.
Right, totally.
Like, Ryan Gosling has this unique ability to be like, he could get any girl he wants, but then, like, he plays these characters like Ken, who's just, like, struggling so hard. Just in
Where
life.
I see love, she sees a friend. Like, oh my god, it's so good.
Like, his body move, like, his mannerisms and body movements. So, like, the very first shot of him has a voiceover that's saying, Ken only has a good day when Barbie looks at him. And Gosling is standing there holding his surfboard, looking so just, like, uncomfortable and distressed because, like, Barbie's not there to look at him. And I laughed the second I saw it. And I rewound it and watched it again because it was so good because he's just so, like, what's going on? So, like, everything he said made me laugh. I know that his performance isn't, like, as emotional as, like, Robbie's was.
Right.
And it wasn't, and there's conversation to be had about this of, like, how Ken stuff is kind of more played for laughs, even when it's being, like, serious, which kind of is a little unfortunate, I think. Just another line is, like, a good moment was when Barbie was saying to another Ken isn't cool, and Gosling's just like, he is to me. Like, there isn't a more entertaining performance of the year. This is like that level of, like, when I give, like, Ryan Reynolds, like, a Deadpool nomination.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, it's not expecting the most out of the guy in terms of, like, emotional variety. But there's a place in movies for these performances that you're just like, I'm going to look back so fondly on this because that was just entertaining from start to finish.
Totally.
But because he's not technically the main character, even though he's the best part, screw it, he is. I will put him number 2 and give number 1 to somebody who's, like, more of a main role.
All right. My number 1 best actor of 2023. There were a lot of incredible I saw an incredible performance from an actor last night. Like, the last 2023 movie that I watched. And it's not going to be that person, but very, very easily could have made it on this list. There were a ton of considerations. But in an earlier video, we said it a couple times. Everybody can get it. Everyone can get it.
Yeah.
My number 1 actor of the year is Jonathan Majors.
I knew Majors was coming because I didn't think you'd leave me hanging. Not that that's why you picked it.
No. But, look, he did bad stuff. I can separate the fact that he had 2 of the best, and could have been 3, of the best performances of the year, including one of the only actor performances this year that I could legitimately say, like, this is can't miss. Like, watch this movie even if you don't like these movies, because this performance is can't miss.
Yeah.
And that's as Dane in Creed 3. Like, that performance is so... should have been, we'll say now, should have been star-making. Then, of course, you add on, and this is why part of it now is so heartbreaking for me, too, because you knew that I was on such unsteady ground with where the MCU was going, and then I watched Ant-Man and saw what, like, kind of the direction for, like, Kang, and I was like, oh, he's a badass. Okay, I'm comfortable with this now. And then now that's not what's going to happen, clearly. So now it's like, that kind of gets pulled out from under me again. Regardless of what he did, and I'm not justifying or excusing what he did, but he's deserving of this spot for me for having one of the only can't miss performances of the year in 2023. So a lot of people aren't going to like it. A lot of people are going to think I'm somehow silently condoning what he did, which is ridiculous. It's got absolutely nothing to do with that. It's got everything to do with what happened on the screen in those two movies. And based on what happened on the screen in those two movies, Jonathan Majors deserves to be the number one for me this year. And he is. Everyone can get it.
You can't go wrong with Dane. One of the best, like, Rocky franchise villains, and it's large part because of him.
Absolutely.
And his performance. And I don't say that lightly. You know I love Rocky movies.
Exactly.
Even though that's not really a Rocky movie, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you kept him number one. So for my number one, we're going with an actor who portrays someone who did worse things than Jonathan Major.
Ooh.
Joel Edgerton in Master Gardener.
Ooh, okay.
My boy.
Yeah, there you go.
That you kind of willed. Actually, Ryan Gosling's also my boy. That's the problem. They're both my boys.
Right.
And I don't think either of them have ever gotten in for, like, best performance.
No, maybe
for
not.
Me. And they're both amongst my favorite current actors. He plays like an ex-Nazi. You kind of willed him being my boyfriend into existence, because one year he's just like your boyfriend, and I'm like, I don't even know where that came from. But then, like, I've started noticing him more, and I really love Joel Edgerton for whatever reason. It's just, all right. The Edgerton qualities remain the same here. His face naturally accomplishes two tasks, like, simultaneously. One, it makes him sympathetic while also giving him a low-key menace. Which is, like, perfect for a character who was an ex-Nazi trying to kind of get out of that, but constantly fighting those past urges to be violent and racist and just terrible, just a terrible person, right? So the fact that he can he still has that sympathy, like, this guy's trying, but then you know there's something underneath there that brought him to being a Nazi in the first place, right? He's pretty stoic most of the time, but Edgerton's one of those dudes where it's on his face, and he lets go a few times. He's kind of the same as Cage for me too, where, like, there's a certain presence that he just brings when he's on screen that is just really endearing to me. And that's basically all I have to say. I guess about Edgerton. I don't love that movie, but I love his performance.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to put Edgerton on there, like, number one, even though Gosling would have also been nice to put him number one.
Yeah.
Like, they're just two different performances. Like, this one has, like, more meat, on the bone. But, I like these roles. I'm going to say it again, and I say it every time. The low-key, subtle, the drop, like Tom Hardy in The Drop type performances, where there's, like, they're not even doing much. But there's something there, and you can sense it, right? You can just tell. And so Joel Edgerton and Master Gardener is my number one.
So there you have it. Joel Edgerton and Jonathan Majors. You can choose which one of those two is more controversial. Are our number one best actors of 2023. We will move on in the next video to shine the light on the ladies, our best actresses of 2023.